tell you something about Andrew. This is my boy right here. You disrespect him, you're disrespecting me.
Inside fighting. Shout out to inside fighting.
We're back. It's the Fight Season Podcast. It's me, Jesse Rowe, with Inside Fighting, joined as always by our head writer, Timmy Shoes MMA on X, Timothy James. What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm good. Glad to be back. Got some interesting things to talk about. Always a pleasure.
Do we? It's kind of a boring, slow week. No, we do. We do. Got my laundry here on the back of my chair.
And we got fights. Any weekend that there's fights is a good weekend in my book.
Yeah, they are apex fights, but we still, we can't complain because we're like in the, what is it? It's like 14 straight weeks of UFC fights, which is always a good stretch to be in. It's a good place to be. But obviously we're going to talk about the UFC Mexico card because I do want to get into just how that whole card played out. Sort of an interesting night. I'm interested in your take on it because we haven't touched on it yet. But really quick, let's get into this Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney press conference yesterday. They're actually going to be having another one today. If you're watching this on Thursday, they're going to be having another one in Los Angeles today. We're recording this on a Wednesday night. So yesterday they had their New York press conference, and it was, Ryan came out with a throne. We had a great little interaction between Bill Haney and Henry Garcia, which was my favorite personal part of the press conference, with Henry Garcia telling Bill Haney that he sounds like Don King. But there was all sorts of stuff, brought up from their days of fighting in junior boxing, where they're 3-3. Haney and Garcia beat each other 3 times. And it was, I got to admit, like, as much as we love Ryan Garcia, I was not nearly as hyped up about this fight as I was the Tank Davis fight. But after seeing it, I'm into it. Excuse me. But I'm also like, I'm curious what your thoughts are just on the overall way that like this is being built up, and like, who do you think the A side is? Because I have some thoughts on this because there's been some debate about whether it should be Haney Garcia or Garcia Haney. What are your thoughts?
Well, the A side is obviously Ryan Garcia. He's a much bigger name.
Right.
If you want to be a boxing purist and argue about, the talent, I think both of these guys are very evenly matched. I think they're the 2 biggest talents, and that's why this fight is so awesome. But if we're talking about star power, if we're talking about draw, if we're talking about what makes the A side, it's Ryan Garcia all day.
Well, they say, it's being hashtagged as Haney Garcia. So Haney is like being marketed as the A side, but I just don't, I don't know if the pay-per-view history backs that up. I think that Haney beating Regis Progress the way that he did was like his sort of, not his coming out moment, because he obviously beat Lomachenko, but it just felt like he wasn't really considered a big draw, and Ryan is like a massive draw. So I just, I don't know. I don't even know why I brought that up, but I was watching it the whole time, and I'm like, man, like Ryan's kind of just carrying this whole thing. Whatever you may think about him, he really is just carrying this whole thing. And because everything was centered around, they were even bringing up Ryan's relationship with Floyd at the press conference. So everything was sort of centered around Ryan. And I'm just like, yeah, Ryan's going to carry this show again.
Yeah, well, I agree. I tend to agree. I think, it's a star-studded matchup in terms of talent. The boxing talent is there, but we all know who the draw is in this.
Yeah.
I don't think people I think if you went on this, this is the way I'll put it. If you went on the streets and you asked people randomly on the streets, tell me some boxers. Who are some boxers? They throw out Floyd Mayweather, Canelo, and Ryan Garcia. No one's gonna mention Devin Haney. And that's not a knock on the guy. It's just it's a popularity thing.
Right. If you ask like who the best boxer at like 140 is, people might say Devin Haney. But talking about like your favorite, I just don't feel like Haney is like a massive fan favorite, personally. Yeah. And there's also some like weird stuff about like that, what they're using to like market the fight, that like supposedly Ryan said something about Devin's religion. Both of them are very religious guys. It seems evident to me that Ryan didn't say the thing that Devin was claiming that he did. But the best part of the marketing of all of this, and we have to, we have to do our own little, we have to buff our shoulders up a little bit here, was Ryan went on Ariel Helwani and talked about how he's become good friends with Nate Diaz and who introduced them was our one and only Andrew Capichetti here at Inside Fighting, linked the two together. So this new friendship formed between Ryan Garcia and Nate Diaz is all thanks to Inside Fighting, and I couldn't be happier about it. Ryan says that he has a surprise for the press conference. He also said that he might be going live on Instagram with Nate Diaz tonight as Wednesday night. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but that's what he said. So I'm hoping that Ryan brings Nate Diaz to the press conference. I'm not saying that I know that that's going to happen. This is just my hope. I'm just hoping that he rolls up with Nate, because that would just be like an epic team up.
Listen, our man Andrew Capichetti, he is Inside Fighting's executive producer. He's got his finger is on the pulse of the fight game. He hooked up Ryan with Floyd Mayweather when they went jogging together. Now he connected Ryan with Nate Diaz. Man, one day I just hope that I can sit down at a table and with Cap and with Ryan and with Nate, and just passing a blunt around, hearing the stories. I'd love to hear it, because man, they got to have all the best stories from inside the fight game.
I just want to know if if Ariel was like seething on the inside a little bit when
you could
Ryan,
see it in his face.
Yeah.
Ariel was so jealous. He was like, "Oh, you were hanging out with Nate Diaz? Oh, yeah, his brother doesn't like me because from their beef way back in the day."
I know who introduced you. Oh, it's another MMA outlet. It's linked you guys up. Yeah, I know. I loved that.
It's this guy who actually has fighters who actually like him. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah. Anyways, that was just a cool moment. So if you haven't seen it, I will only recommend you go watch it for that specific scene, nothing else. That being said, I am excited for the fight. I am very excited for the press conference. It's always fun. I think that it's going to be a great matchup. But there's all this talk about whether or not the fight should have taken place in Brooklyn or in Vegas, because Ryan wanted the fight to be in Vegas, but Devin Haney managed to get the fight in Brooklyn. And they were talking about how that's like sort of like a rite of passage for fighters, great fighters, to go through New York. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But isn't it that true for Madison Square Garden? That's not necessarily true for the Barclays Center.
Yeah, no.
Right.
The Barclays Center is where the Nets play. It's next to Park Slope, and it's also next to Kingsbridge. It's a very interesting part of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I'm pretty familiar with it, but it does not have the rich history that Madison Square Garden. Actually, the joke I used to make was that the Barclays Center is perfect for that neighborhood because the Nets play there, and just like the people who live in Park Slope, they're not actually from New York. They moved there from New Jersey.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I know. That's why I asked you, because you're a resident New Yorker, so you would know. But
yes.
They were talking about, I was like, this big deal about fighting in New York, and I'm like, yeah, but they're not fighting at Madison Square Garden. Like that's where you make your name.
I don't want to talk too much about the Barclays Center because it is an awesome venue. I've seen quite a few shows.
I'm sure it is.
It is a cool venue, and it's a great place to fight. But in terms of like fighting in New York, it has to be Madison Square Garden.
Is that where Raleigh and Tank fought? Was at the Barclays Center? I think that's
yeah. I don't remember.
Anyways, we can move on from that. Best of luck to Ryan. Looking forward to the fight. Looking forward to the press conference. But you made a couple of TikToks over the weekend and about Brian Ortega, and it was obviously UFC Mexico was an awesome event. I thought the crowd is amazing. The crowd was fighting each other. There were brawls in the crowd. And there were some good fights. There were a couple of like snoozers, but there were some very good ones. It didn't end well for the natural born Mexican fighters at the end of the night, but the two fights were very good. I have some thoughts about Moreno's performance. I thought that he was like really good to start the fight and then finished in a very strange, sluggish sort of way. I wonder if the altitude might have affected him a little bit. Mm-hmm. But watching that Yair Ortega fight, you would have thought in the first like 3 minutes that Brian Ortega was done, was absolutely done. Not only because he got knocked down, like just brutally beat up in that first round. He got 10-8'd in that first round. Let's be real. It was pretty much a 10-8 round. but also he rolled his ankle like 30 seconds before the fight even started. So what were your thoughts on that performance?
That was
Him
nuts.
pulling off the upset, the comeback, pretty awesome. Also bizarre. What were your thoughts?
I loved seeing Brian Ortega go to the wrestling. He did
That's
the
why I
thing
brought
that
it
he
up.
always does in round one. He tried to box with the striker and then he got punished for it, but he busted out the wrestling. I think in the second round he had a double leg. He was in on the hips and he got Yair down. And the sequence that started the submission in the third round was he tripped him out. He won the second round easily and he submitted him in the third round. I've been saying for years, Brian Ortega, stop being in love with your boxing. I know you knocked out Frankie Edgar with an uppercut, and you cracked Chan Sung Jung with an elbow so bad that he forgot where he was. But please learn some wrestling so you can get into your wheelhouse. And look at what happened. He implemented some wrestling, and it worked to great effect. Once the fight got to the ground, Yair didn't know what to do. And I'm very excited to see where Ortega goes from this. Now, as for Brandon Moreno and Brennan Royval, I was pretty surprised. It comes down to quality of strikes, I think. I think Moreno puts out a lot of output, but he doesn't put out a lot of damage a lot of the time. And I think that was the difference.
But I don't think he put out a lot of output. I think that was the thing is like if you look at the
Yeah,
numbers,
well, he
Roy
did.
Val's output was like triple
Mhm.
Moreno's. He threw like I mean his landing percentage was really low. I think he landed like something like 175 strikes, but he threw like 500, something crazy like that. Whereas like Moreno landed like 120 strikes, but only threw like half that or something like that. So and it also seemed to like dwindle down in like the final two rounds, which was odd. It was Roy Val was just like jabbing. That's what his game. It was just like the constant jab, and that's where he was landing. It's like it wasn't pretty, but he was just kept landing. I want to go back to
Do you know offhand where Royval trains? Is he at Trevor
I think
Whitman's
he's a
gym
Denver
in
guy. He
Denver?
trains at altitude, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty
If
sure.
he's with Trevor Whitman in Denver, that's a big thing because I know that Moreno has been training in Las Vegas, which is at sea level, if I'm not mistaken, right? So
Yeah, where
we're
does Brandon
very
Royval
close to sea
train?
level. If he trains at Denver, that's a big advantage because yeah,
Factory
then
X in Englewood.
California or
No, 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 not California. Where is Englewood? I think that might be. Sorry. Yeah, it's in Colorado, so it is Denver.
yep.
So I want to go back
Well,
to
there you go.
yeah, exactly. I want to go back to to Ortega really quick. People didn't realize this. He rolled his ankle, which is funny. It was his right ankle, and then after he won the fight, he jumps into the crowd to go see his family. Nobody was talking about this. He rolled his left ankle walking off the stage. I actually screenshotted it. I'm going to put it on the screen.
I did not
Yeah,
notice that.
it
Wow.
was bizarre. So I don't know what's going on with that, but just pretty impressive the way that he retooled, he brought it all together, and I immediately thought of you because you mentioned that on Insider Betting where you were saying like he gets in love with his boxing, and it gets him in trouble. He has to take a lot of damage before he decides he's gonna go to his submissions. He's gonna go to play to his strengths. And it seems he really did make that choice. Like big end, it seems like end of round one, he was obviously hurt, so he had to wrestle a little bit just to like get his bearings. But he gets 10-8, but he does get the takedown at the end of the round. And then there was actually a scorecard where he got a 10-8 the next round based on his control time because he controlled Yair for so much of it. He actually opened up Yair with some elbows on the ground and pound. And I just as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh shit, Ortega I think he's gonna win this fight now. And the ease of which he did it in that third round was super impressive. But it also made me wonder if there's a serious issue that Yair has, not just the altitude, like gassing out, that was probably part of it, but just how easily Ortega was able to do it after getting the shit kicked out of him in that round. I mean, he just took him down so easily and he set up that submission kind of perfectly without much resistance.
Yeah.
And I'm just I'm concerned for Yair long term if he can't button up that issue.
There's a building off of that, because I think I've noticed what you're getting at. But the thing about Yair is when you look at him in the clinch and when he gets taken down, there does seem to be a strength discrepancy with a lot of the other featherweights. The way, I mean, that trip in the third round, it was a very basic trip, and Brian basically just threw him to the ground. I can't imagine Brian getting that easy of a takedown against very many other, featherweight. Like, that's not going to work against Evloev. Obviously, it's not going to work against Volkanovski. That wouldn't work against, these other bigger featherweights. And Yair is tall for the division, but he doesn't seem particularly strong. And that might be a genetic thing, because sometimes because he's very fast and he's got great striking, right? So he's obviously very fast twitch, but he might not have the strength to match it. So I think that's a disadvantage, a natural disadvantage.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if he went up in weight, if he would be stronger. But he doesn't look as strong. When they were clenched together, you could tell like Ortega was a lot stronger than him.
Yeah,
And I've seen that in other fights with Yair as well. So I think there is a strength. I don't think he's the strongest guy in the division. So when it comes to the grappling, that's gonna work against him.
Yeah, and I say this as a guy who I like. Yair is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I love watching him. I just coming off the Volkanovski loss, how Volk kind of, he was obviously beating him up on the feet too, but how he just had his way with him. He was able to take him down pretty easily. And it's just something that he's gonna have to button up. But either way, I'm happy for Ortega. We only have like a minute here, just really quick. Do you want to see an Ortega get like a title eliminator situation here? Like him versus Evloev seems to be a fight that's being thrown around as a potential title eliminator to face Ilia Topuria.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he took a lot of time off, and then he hadn't won since 2020, but he just beat Yair, who was interim champion not that long ago, right? Less than a year ago. So
One fight ago.
So he deserves, I think, a title eliminator. Let him fight Evloev, and if he can get through Evloev, give him that title shot, because I think styles makes fights. The Topuria fight is very interesting because Ortega gets hit, but he has a very good chin, and that submission game is the X factor. And if he goes to the wrestling more to avoid that boxing, I think it's a very interesting fight. You got to put Topuria against the guys who have the granite chin. So I want to see him versus Holloway, and I want to see him versus Ortega. These are two guys who get hit but don't go down.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it. And I want to say that I did say that I didn't think Ortega deserved to be ranked as high as he was for as long as he was with all that inactivity. I'm happy that he proved me wrong, and I'm happy that he earned his spot. He beat the guy that was ranked higher than him, one spot higher than him. He got his ranking back. So kudos to you, Brian Ortega. Well done for proving me wrong. Thank you for joining.
The Eagle was rebirthed.
Oh God, don't get me started on that.
Let me tell you something about Andrew. This is my boy right here. You disrespect him, you're disrespecting me.
Inside fighting, Sean's inside fighting.